So you've been a parent for about 10, 12 years maybe now. Your child's just about that age where it's time to have the talk. I thought I was ready. Not really sure. Here's what I did. 5 things to keep in mind when having the talk. Let's get into it. Welcome back to episode 6 of Tab Talk Thursdays. Got a real interesting topic for you guys today. This is going to be our first video on parenting, so I'm really excited about it. Finally able to share some of my experiences in the parenting world. And although I had some questions lined up, I actually put those off because I just went through a very interesting time with my own child, and I wanted to share. I felt like it's something that a lot of parents might be going through or have gone through, and maybe you didn't handle it the best way you could have, or maybe you handled it a lot better than I did. But here's my 5 things that I want to share. 5 things on how to handle the birds, the bees, and puberty. All right, so the first thing is assess the situation. You have to think about what it is exactly that you want to convey in this conversation. For me, I had a conversation with my son's mother. We had a discussion about what it is that we thought we should be addressing with him, and what are some of the things that we wanted to be the first ones to talk to him about. Actually, from the day we decided that we were going to have the talk with him, or that I was going to talk to him about it, to that day that it actually happened was about 2 weeks. So there was an issue with him being sick, and we really didn't have the time to get to it, but we finally got to it. In the 2 weeks of planning, I actually took the time to figure out what it was exactly I wanted to address. And then once I decided that, how I was going to address those things. So I'll just share one thing really quickly with you of what I did. So I knew one of the things that I wanted to convey, or at least discuss, was where babies come from, I guess. So although some people share that early on with their children, we never had that conversation. Him and I never had the discussion about where babies come from, how it happens, and all of that. That was one thing that I wanted to convey. And that was something that I said, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. This is what I want to say, and here's how I'm gonna do it. Most importantly, with number 1 on the list is to make sure you have an understanding for yourself of what it is that you want to discuss and what it is that you want your child to know out of this conversation. Okay, so the second thing to keep in mind is it's uncomfortable. It's not just uncomfortable for you, it's uncomfortable for your child as well. So you're uncomfortable, your child's uncomfortable, and that's okay. But just keep that in mind. So I knew going into it that I was gonna be a little uncomfortable about it, just because I wasn't really sure where it would go, what he already knew, what I might be shocked that he already knew, and I wasn't really ready to hear what he might know or what he may have heard in school or whatever. So it's gonna be an uncomfortable situation. But as long as you know that you're gonna be uncomfortable, your child's gonna be uncomfortable, you could address that from the beginning and go into it knowing that, and it makes it a lot easier for you to avoid the uncomfortable silences that comes from being in an uncomfortable situation. The third tip will be to treat them as an adult. Now, I'm not saying that you need to, talk to them with big words and things like that, but treat them as an adult and have respect for them and their opinion, or what it is that they want to actually talk about. Going into it for me, I knew that my son is pretty mature for his age, and I've never talked to him as a child. I always talk straight to him, and I made sure that I let him know that that's what I was doing. So when we first started off the conversation, I said, look, this is a serious conversation I want to have with you, and I want to talk to you as an adult. Some of the things might be uncomfortable, but try to think of it as it's 2 adults talking. It's not just, I'm your father talking down to you, but rather that we're equal, and you could talk to me about whatever it is that you feel comfortable or uncomfortable about as well. Open up the conversation with putting them in the position of you're an adult or a young adult, whatever you feel comfortable telling them. But for me, I told them we're having a serious conversation, adult to adult. I know you're not there yet, but I know you're at that level where I could talk to you straight up. Tip number 3 is make sure that you treat them as an adult, as an equal, or just avoid treating them like a child. Tip number 4 was something that I had to keep reminding myself about throughout the conversation. You should probably do the same. And here's the tip. Ask rather than tell. As I'm having this conversation with my son, I'm asking him questions to see, engage what it is that he knows. I think it's really important not to underestimate what they know, what they might have already learned in school, whether it was through friends, teachers, actual videos or whatever it might be, on the internet, Facebook, Instagram. There's a lot of information out there. Some kids are looking for it. Some kids are just being bombarded with it. Asking questions, and I'll give you an example of something that I asked my son was, where do babies come from? I asked him, I said, where do babies come from? And he said, from a man and a woman. So I said, okay, but what happens? Like, what is it exactly that has to happen? So I was asking questions leading up to what it was that I wanted to share with him. But that's just something to keep in mind, asking rather than telling. So sometimes as parents, we want to say, this is what it is, this is what's going on, without ever asking questions, or sometimes we ask after the fact. During this conversation, I kept reminding myself, let me see what he knows. Let me ask him. Let me ask him what it is that he would like to know. So a lot of my conversation was actually me just asking questions. And as I figured out what he knew, I either educated him better on the conversation or gave him more information or new information about that specific topic. Tip number 4, ask questions. Don't tell them, ask them. All right, tip number 5. Now I feel like this is the most important one out of everything. If you're trying to build up a level of comfortability with your child, and in this conversation, for future conversations, because this is just the beginning, right? We're finally having the conversation. We're touching on the birds, the bees, and puberty. And in that, they're just learning about it. Let's just assume that they're just learning about this. You're having the conversation for the first time. You may be opening the door for them. But it's important to set a foundation for these things because they're going to learn about it regardless. For me, I'd rather me be the one to introduce it to my son and to have that conversation and start to set a tone. My thing was sharing my story with him, sharing the stories of people that I know or things that I personally went through so that he understood I've been there. I know what you're going through. And the way I did that was simple. I made it appropriate for his age. And as he starts to get older and as he starts to become more experienced, I'll share more with him. But it's important to let them know what it is that you've been through and what it is that you've experienced so that they understand they're not the only ones going through it. And you know what? You do understand because you went through it. I try to lighten the mood up a little bit. I made some of it funny. I made jokes out of the things that I went through. One of the jokes, and I'll share a story with you, is that when I first started to grow pubic hair, it was right after I went and got a haircut. So as I'm taking a shower, I start to see that the hairs aren't coming off my body and I'm trying to pull them off and they were stuck. So I scream out to my sister to come in and I'm like freaking out, like, hey, she's like outside the shower and I'm like, I can't get these hairs off, they're stuck. I don't know what it is, they're not coming off. And she's like, where are they at? And I told her and she starts cracking up, she's dying, she got tears in her eyes. But I told my son this story and I told him what it was that I was dealing with just to lighten the mood, what I went through. And he found it funny, we laughed about it, it lightened the mood a little bit. And then he shared some stories and we just went back and forth and it opened up the dialogue. Don't be afraid to share what you've been through, to show them and make them comfortable so that they could share with you. Another piece of that is that the more you share and the more open and vulnerable that you become, the more that they'll share. They'll feel more confident in coming to talk to you because they'll know that you're sharing something about yourself. So when they are in a position and down the road when they feel like, oh my God, I wish I had somebody to talk to, they'll come to you and you won't even have to go to them and fight them to give you the information. They'll come to you and share with you. This is tip number 6, or like a bonus tip. A lot of you guys want to be friends with your kids and you're acting like you're best friends and you're treating them as a friend. That's cool, and I understand that, and you do want to have a friendship with your child, but you're not their friend. You're their parent. Parent them. One of the things you could do to gain that friendship with them is to earn their trust and their comfort. That comfortability that you need to create with them, that has to be conscious. You have to be conscious of it. And I understand that some people, they also have the idea that I'm their parent, I tell them what to do, they do what I say because I'm your parent. For me, and in my experience so far with my children, it's been easier to show them rather than tell them, and get them to do things quicker when they see that I'm doing it. When they see that I've been there and done that. When I share stories with them and they see like, wow, you really know what you're talking about because you did that. I share my stories, and that way they see I've been there and done that. So one of the ways to get them to open up to you, one of the ways to get them to be more of have a friendship with your child, not be their friend, but have a friendship with your child and build that trust and comfort, is to literally take the time and make the effort to build it. Don't assume it's just gonna happen. Don't assume because you're their parent, they're gonna come to you. I know a lot of people, not in my case, but I know a lot of people who just never had a friendship or never had a relationship enough to go speak to their parents. A lot of my friends actually used to come to my house and speak to my parents about things that they were going through and get their advice because they couldn't talk to their parents. So don't assume that just because you're their parent, they're gonna come talk to you. Take the time, make sure that they understand. Take the time to sit down and tell them, I'm here for you. Make sure you let them know you could talk to me about anything, and reiterate it throughout time, especially as they get older. In my case, I know my son's about to be a preteen, but it's something that I instilled in him since he was very young, and even now, even more now, I'm gonna make sure that he understands that I'm always gonna be here for him. I always have his back, and no matter what, he can trust me. So those were my 5 tips. Those were the basis of my talk with my son. It was awkward. We laughed. We joked around. There was some weird, awkward moments throughout the conversation where we kind of just looked at each other, but then we laughed about it. It's something that needs to be done, and you should be proud to take on that role. You should be happy to tackle it. It's not the easiest conversation, but it is one of the most important conversations you're gonna have with your child. So make sure you tackle it head on. Use these 5 tips, and if you have anything else that you have done or that you have been through or experienced when having these types of conversations with your child, please email them to me or put them in the comments below. Share this video. Maybe it would help somebody else that's going through it or is preparing to have a conversation, and this could just help them as a foundation. As always, don't forget to like, share, comment, but most importantly, subscribe. And don't forget to turn on the notifications so you could be updated whenever we post new videos. Peace and blessings. Don't forget, we started a new series for Tuesdays. It's called Tim's Tuesday. This is my story Tuesday. Go check those out. But don't forget to subscribe right there. Go ahead, hit the subscribe button, and stay with us. Peace.